Hello, this is Clint Locklear with the Farmer's Grove, and I'm going to do something a little bit different than being out putting in cover crops or something like that. A couple of months ago, I went to North Carolina outside of Asheville, and I was asked by Equipped International, which is a missionary driven, non denominational, missionary driven organization that helps people go around the world, show people how to dig wells, grow food. They got some really cool concrete dome containers for housing situations that are very secure. They're doing amazing work. They really are. They've got a site that they bring people in and they teach them all the skills that they know. And they wanted to talk to someone in permaculture that may have some ideas. They want to turn their site they have now into a training site for people to go in South America and Africa and other places and basically show them how to have a better life with the better technology and with maybe some better methods and what they know. It's a pretty good mission. Great people. I was highly impressed. Had a good time, but he wanted me to come up with some things that maybe they could do with their property, with the idea of teaching other people, kind of like a training site, but not so much the way that we would do in permaculture, where it's just all the thousands of techniques that you can use within inside of permaculture, but more of what they can show someone to go somewhere else, how to pattern their land, how to harvest water, grow food, dig wells. And if you're into digging wells, or if that's something that's interests you, after talking with him, he's probably the guy I would go to if that's what my interest was. That's Equipped International. But I'm going to look at one part of their property today. I'm doing this because this may help somebody else, but it's a way for him to see this, Keith, and for the people that's on the board of Equip, just to give them an idea. That's all this is just from my perspective of what they could do on that property that would really help them out in a common sense, not over the top, not super crazy, something they can handle, something they can probably cash flow, uh, and be part of that community already. And then when they bring people on, they can train them how to do these different techniques. So this is where the property is. This is where their main teaching buildings. This is where the land manager lives. And there's two places on this farm that they wanted me to look at. One is this field, which I'm going to explain a little bit. And another, we're going to do another video showing this, just trying to give some ideas on what they can do. This is a pretty much open field. It's got some interesting characteristics about it. It's got an old road. I'm talking old road that's been it goes through their property both directions. It causes a massive erosion problem, which means there's large amounts of water in there. That part of North Carolina gets a good amount of rain, and it flows down through there, and it's getting erosion. And he was wanting to know what he could do to try to stop that. So we're going to look at that in the problem is the solution type way. This is kind of what it is, just the photograph. This is what it looks like when you look at the contours. Here's where that road system goes down. Now that's as wide as a single track road, and it's about 4 foot deep. It's already in the landscape that way, and you can see how the contours are. And then let me get this orientated. Here you can probably see a little bit better. That's the road. Here's a road that's coming this way that you get to Equipped International. There's another side road there. But what can we do here to make this productive? Right now they get some hay off of it, and that is about it. So, I mean, you got to trust anybody that ever uses crayon magic markers. That's the show that there is authority in whatever they say. And I'm not saying this is what they should do. I'm just saying this is something that they could do that we're going to talk about here. Now, here's an outline of their property. Here's the old roadbed that comes down through here. Now, when I was walking the land, it drops down into this, and there's more contours than this right here. I'm just picking two of them, just for example of what we can do. Now, that's the way it sits right now. This is the simplest thing that y'all can do with this property. It really is. It's the simplest. It's right there in front of you. It's easy to do. There's some things you need to keep in mind before you do this. It gives that land a pattern, which means you can give the space a place, which is very important, so that you keep on track with what you want to do. Here is the road ditch, where there's none of this here now. Here's the road, and up next to the fence. What I would suggest that y'all do is you already have the obvious, easy, low-tech thing to do with that water is to stop it. You can continue to let it flow, but you're going to have erosion problems. You know, one simple thing that you could do to stop that erosion if you wanted to is simply, if this is what y'all decide to do, it's totally fine. But if you look at the bottom of that ditch, I mean, if y'all would just come in here and either dig out and then take that dirt, and then that way that water is going to get trapped in here. You could definitely do that. You could put in some rocks and stuff like that. But I think there's some neat things that y'all can do with that property by using what is very obvious on the property. So if you put a dam, say on the elevation of, I think this one is 3, let me get my 360. If you look at that contour, it's about the shape of it. It's the easiest way to stop that water in this particular location, and the cheapest, which is probably what y'all want to do, is you can dam that road up. And when you do that, though, there's some things to keep in mind. You don't want to shut this side of the property off from this side. So you want to put these dams in, and you want to design those dams so they're a road. So you can get from the buildings where the students are at, and you can go across the dam. You have to have some way to get across here, unless you're going to build a bridge or something across this. Those are an easy way, and it's anybody that does bulldozers and stuff, they understand what you're talking about here. But you can pull dirt out of the middle, you can put your dam there, and you can back that up a long way, and it's the cheapest way to hold a maximum amount of water on that. That's like ground zero minimum of what I would do, because it's so easy to do there. The second thing, if you bring swales out on these contours, and these little markings are the soft berm on one side, and this would hold water. These can feed these ponds when you're not getting as much rain, and the ponds can help overflow into the swales, and you can move that water off this way. You can have tree systems up here. You could put muscadines or kiwis, and put tree systems on the bottom. It's just a very generic thing that you can do that is not going crazy over the top with anything. So if you put in 3 dams on that property, 2 of them with swales, you've got tree systems going around, you've got this is kind of a holding type pond just to keep any of the water that you can. You'll notice that I'm putting trees for you on the sides. You want to shade this water because we get awful hot in the summer, and where we don't get the evaporation. These can be nut production, fruit production. Don't forget nitrogen fixers. Some of them could be ornamental. Some of them, especially on the sides of this, could be willows to help you with a lot of shade. This type system is not exactly set up for row crops. The swales are more for trees. It doesn't hurt row crops, but it's not exactly what a swale is designed for. But there's some things to think about by doing this. It's cheap to put the dams in the tight places. You've already got the side walls, so the height of your dams is going to depend on how far the water goes back. The swales will help fill that pond where you're always going to have water, and when there's overflow, it'll fill this and filter through here, and your trees will grow really well. So that's kind of basic what I would do. Now, make sure that you can drive across both of these dams. Make sure that on the end of the swales over here, this is where you have an overflow or a spillway. So when that swale ends, you can drive around it. What you don't want to do is lock up parts of this property from the other property. That's just bad design if you do that. So you need to end the swale with enough room to drive between trees and the swell itself. So you need to leave space on this side so you can drive across the dam and you can still work all of this over on this side. That's what I would recommend. Now, the other thing you'll notice on here are these little orange beige marks. What I would recommend, guys, because it's really low-hanging fruit, is the first year that y'all start doing this, or you could even do this now, because it's just middle June, you still have time. If you come out about 20 feet from that fence all the way around through here, plant it really heavily in Sudan grass, sorghum, Sudex, whatever the version that you can get. It's a very fast biomass growing. It'll outcompete everything. Get you a 50-pound bag of sun hemp and mix in with this. You know, get you some cowpeas because that'll grow really good in that area. Mix in some buckwheat. This will become an absolute 20-foot, this strip all the way around here will be 20-foot jungle of biomass. And then you can come through with, if you watch some of the other videos I've done where I didn't have the cover crop crimper, but I was just using the telephone poles, hook it to a truck or a four-wheeler and drive through these and put all that biomass onto the ground. You'll get about, if you do it real heavy, you're probably going to have about 8 inches of biomass. Let that overwinter, then plant trees all the way up through here, because estimating just what I saw when I was up there, you could probably get about 2 to 250 fruit and nut trees all the way around the edge of this property, all the way around without messing with any of the space inside. So that's just one of the most obvious things that I would do, is I would put it really heavy into cover crop, roll it over. You got your mulch on hand. It's going to hold moisture. Start feeding the soil. Go in and put your nut, your fruit, and your nitrogen fixing trees in there. The next year you could start filling in with different parts of a food forest type system, as far as having bushes and perennials and ground covers and eventually vines and stuff like that. This is what I would do on this property. And the reason is, for a classroom situation, this gives you a very handy pattern. If you think of a pattern where you're trying to make a space, which this field is space, and you're trying to put certain parts of it into a place, that way that you can really get a hold of what you're doing on your farm, your pattern, just off the natural obvious part of this field, you've got, like, say this is a paddock, 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 this is a paddock. By looking at this pattern and thinking of each one of these as a different place, then once this is in, and once you get this under control and you get the trees planted and you get the maintenance of this down, we can start looking at things we can put into these different spaces, which will be a place where they could be row crops, they could be wineries, they could be more tree systems, they can use different techniques like hugelkultur. There's all kind of stuff you can do here, but I wouldn't get bogged down with that right yet. Get your trees around the edge, get your ponds in, start holding the water, start infiltrating that water, get your trees upside and downside of the swales, get your shade trees in, and then when you get all that straightened out, then you can start, really doing what you can do inside of these, because every one of these could be a different teaching block for you. This is not going to be that expensive to do, because the dams are going to be so small. You've already got the walls in. There's plenty of clay on the property itself. So that's pretty simple of what I would do. Now, something to think about. This is what you can do. Now, these get more complex as we go down, and they're also going to get more expensive because you're going to have the machines there a little bit longer. If you're renting the machines, it won't be that big of a deal. But if you're not renting machines, you also have to think about the time of the driver. So just keep that in mind. Here is the road that's going down through here. That's not going to change from the original drawing. But there's some things we can do with what's going to be behind that dam and behind those swales that could be really, really interesting. Now, if you make this where this here is water, which means you'll have to plan out and get everything lined up on your digging. This could be about 12 inches, 6 inches, depending on what you want to do, where you have your spillway on your dam so it flows down to the next one. So there's an even keel of water in here. I don't think you're going to have trouble holding water there, especially when you have swells filling these in. But what this allows you to do is you can plant stuff in here that are water plants or crawfish inside of this shallow area, and then you can have the deeper section for a different thing like tilapia or catfish or something like that. And then you can actually look at some freshwater clams. There's a lot of things in the using the water with different zones that we could do, but that's one thing you could do. Have it really shallow, almost like it would be a marsh or a swamp. I would dig, these are right here are deep holes. I would definitely dig a deep hole on each side. That way you've got water moving back and forth and it's not getting stagnant. You don't want to, I really don't recommend you make these things like big squares or something. You don't want a lot of corners the water get trapped in, because you'll have deep and deep and shallow, and the water will move back and forth. You can put trees, whether fruit or shade, coming around this way. It'd just be a very interesting thing you could do for not a lot of money. Now, as far as teaching goes, if you want to start making these more complex, because we can, in permaculture, we can keep stacking functions on top of anything we do. And that's the reason it's hard for anybody to ever say that land is fully productive, because there's always somebody with different eyes that can see something. Now, if this is shallow water here, this is shallow water here, but what we're doing when we're in here with the backhoe is we're, instead of just making this the actual contour of what that level would be, we're raking back the dirt this way, and we're leaving islands. You see the little greens? We're leaving islands. So you could think of this as chinampas. That way you could take, as silt builds up in here, you've got your fertility to throw over on the islands, and you could grow stuff right in here that would absolutely love it. And you can, with the shallow water, you can still grow your crawfish and water plants for edible inside of this shallow area. You still have the deeper water here, so you can do fish and things like that. That's an option that's a little more complex than this one, and this one is a little more complex than this one. But this is something like peaches, being where you're at outside of Asheville. We get these weird frosts that are very late in the year. If in the brown, these are islands. Now this is still shallow water, just like this one. This is shallow water. This brown would be an island that you would berm up. And you want to give you a land bridge, or you want to make a wood bridge or something to get over there. So you can just walk over there. Don't make it hard on yourself. But on this island, you could plant stuff that's frost tender. So when you get because the water is going to insulate that, and if there's going to be a light frost, in middle of April, it probably won't hurt your peach trees or some other tree like that you decide. That's totally up to you. But this is an island inside of the shallow water that would be designed for a tree system. There again, you still got your water plants, your crawfish, your mussels, you've got your fish, and you've got this edge out here that would be great for blueberries and a lot of other different plants that you could do this with. You could use part of this for a comfrey nursery right on the edge or right on the edges of this island. You'd have all the comfort you'd ever need, and you could probably actually start selling it through the mail. You'd have so much of it. That's one of the things you could do. Let some ducks in here periodically to really get the fertilization up. It's a really cool idea. Plums, apples, different things that are frost proof. This is just another island. It's the shape. It allows water to move around, That's what this is. They don't have to be exactly this shape. This is just an illustration. But you can have a tree system or a bush system, a blueberry system built like this. You'd have the happiest blueberries in the world. And then, every year or so, just have some of your students go out there and scrape the sediment off the bottom, throw up around the blueberries, and you're going to have happy, happy blueberries. But that is what I would think that you would do. And it's not complicated. It's really not. It's kind of the natural pattern that you're going to have on your land anyway. You've already got the road. These are your natural contour. It gives you a pattern of your property so you can turn space into a place. You can start putting water back down into the soil. It's going to fix your erosion problem, obviously. And it gives you a lot of options to, once you get this taken care of, then we can go back in and keep adding complexity, where we have trellises over the water example, or we start putting in patterns inside of this where you may want to do a raised bed, a raised bed, a raised bed, a raised bed for crops that you could sell to help pay for people to work this. And then on this one, say you could actually have a tree, and then you have a tree and move that down. So you can have this into row crops with some nitrogen fixing trees and bushes. Then this would be that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. This could be the place of row crops right in here. And it's permanent beds, but you're adding diversity all the time, which is usually the goal when we're looking at permaculture. So hopefully this helps y'all. If this is what y'all decide to do, I can come out again probably and look at it, or when y'all get this done, or come help lay it out. And when y'all get this done, then we can start building complexity over time. But don't get in too big of a hurry. Get your trees around the fence, get this pattern in place. Then we'll start working on the complexity, because what you don't want to do, and a lot of people do this, is they get so excited about putting in a system that they want to do everything at once, and it overwhelms them, and then it just turns into a big mess and a lot of stuff die. And we don't want that to happen to you, because there's a lot of things eventually that you could do where you got that. It looks like the whole old horse arena down there. We could actually experiment on your place with a crater garden, where show people if they have high winds and they need to hold moisture and stuff, that we could actually pull off some of this water right here and fill in the crater part of the garden and have this terrace below ground level so the wind can't get it. Get a lot of advantages of a crater garden. So that's something we could add later, possibly, from doing this, and you can get to it this way. But we can keep adding complexity to this till 30 years from now. You're still adding little stuff that when someone shows up, they can go into a village somewhere and get them on the same path where they can start a system, get it established, then start adding complexity over time. And they have time to think about what their needs really are as far as that complexity is, and they build it up. So I hope that helps, guys. And if you have any questions about it, just let me know.